There are 23 people out there attending this webinar. Welcome to all of you to this new webinar by UNICA, by the Scholarly Communication Working Group. Welcome today to this session on research data management that is promoted by the University of Vienna. I think we have a very interesting and compelling program with a variety of perspectives regarding research data management, from just global European insights to local experiences at the universities, as well as some hints on the main technical issues and interoperability challenges we are facing in these years. First of all, I would like to give the floor to Ronald Maya. Ronald Maya is Vice Rector of Digitalization and Knowledge Transfer at the University of Vienna since the 1st of October 2019. He's Professor of Information Systems and was head of the Department of Information System Production and Logistics Management at the Leopold Franzens University of Innsbruck from 2008 2019. Ronald Maya studied business informatics at the Johannes Kepler University of Linz. He is a PhD also, and he has a large career, very near to information and all the challenges that information posed in research. So I think he is a very good person to introduce us the topic, not only because he comes from the University of Vienna, that is the organizer, but also because he is really aware of the challenges of research data. Ronald?
Thank you very much, and my pleasure to be here with you all. Great that you participate in this research seminar promoted by the University of Vienna. I was already introduced, so let me quickly, actually point you towards a couple of, steps that we took during the last couple of years. I mean, research data management is something that has been with us for a very long time. Not so much under this label, though, because people used to, I used to, working with data, creating data, generating data, collecting data, analyzing it, etc. You all know that. What is kind of new is that, we are pushing very much, we meaning the whole community of researchers are pushing very much towards open science, towards interoperability, towards meta-analysis of data, and the challenges that we run into as societies, they are of a dynamic that also the dynamics of research need to speed up somehow, in order to keep the pace, of the developments out there in the society. So these are new challenges out there that we try to address, firsthand. The first thing I was actually handed over was, we are right in the middle of developing a policy on research data management. You can finish it, finish it in the next couple of days, it's almost there, kind of thing. This was when I started. I said, well, a policy is one thing, but I do not want to actually push a policy out there without that we really thought very hard about the service that we can deliver towards researchers, scientists, in order for them to actually live up to the expectations, created not so much by the policy, but created by what I, earlier addressed, by societal challenges, by the push from inside the community and things like that. The policy is only, raising awareness, but we just want to raise awareness when we are ready to also be able to support the researchers. What we did was then set up a structure, of research data management group, spanning the university library, which has been, there for a long time as a knowledge hub, if you want so, and they took care a lot about, these topics, but also the computing center as the infrastructure provider, also the research services as the ones, that are working with researchers when they plan for submitting project proposals, and also study and learning, teaching and study services, because part of open science is open educational resources, and data can be part of open educational resources. And we also had in the quality assurance department in that. So we created such a group, set up an email address, a service desk, a website, trainings, etc. And what allowed us actually to, go the extra mile in this, it was a number of projects that were funded by the Austrian Ministry of Science and, Education. They invested 50 million euros, which is a lot for Austria, for the 22 universities to team up to do some digitalization projects together. And part of this was also 3 projects in the research data management area. So there's a research infrastructure, research data management, and the metadata about research data project. 3 projects out there that we are embarked on in the journey, and that allowed us actually also to set up a certificate program in data stewardship, which started actually, well, it will start next week, doesn't it? Really with the kickoff next week. We are very excited that we've got a nice crowd of people, signed up to this, not only from the University of Vienna, of course, not even only from Austria, but from European countries all over the place, which is great to see. And we also set up a pilot project on data stewardship, with a hybrid model where we've got the central coordination closely linked with the research data management group set up in the university library. And we've got 3 data stewards at the moment, 2.5, I would say, 2 already have begun their work, and the 3rd one is just, on the way of being part of the team in 3 different faculties. And, they work together in order to, actually cascade all the services, processes, policies from the central, administration, closely related to the disciplinary specifics and, to the daily handlings of data in the faculties and centers. So this is kind of, the situation we are in right now. Quite excited to share all that information with you. And I, again, warmly welcome you to this wonderful webinar. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, I hand over, I don't know to whom, but probably to Laura or to Raul. I'm not sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ronald, for your welcome words. Does anybody want to ask any question to the Vice Rector, or we can just go ahead? I think you have told us many interesting things about your situation with your projects in the coming days, actually. So I think we will have some opportunity to discuss what you are doing this year. So let's start the session with the different speakers. We have really a diversity of speakers from different backgrounds and different perspectives. We will be having a little less than an hour of speakers, then we will have more or less half an hour for questions and answers. So if I may, I can ask you to leave the questions until we finish, so that we can, let's say, transform this into some kind of round table. Okay, this will be more engaging and interactive for all of us. So first of all, we will have Birgit Smith. Birgit is head of Knowledge Commons at the Göttingen State University. She coordinates international and national open science activities and projects, and she leads the unit called Knowledge Commons at the Göttingen State University Library. Her activities focus on policies, infrastructures, and training. She contributes to several international committees like LIBER, for instance. She also served on the European Commission Horizon 2020 expert group on the future of scholarly publishing. So I think she can provide us with a very good insight on what's ahead of us and the European perspective. So Birgit, the floor is yours.
So sorry, I was searching for the unmute button, so, which is a bit hidden when you are in such an environment and have already shared. So thanks for the organizers for inviting me to speak today. I'd like to share some views on the the European landscape of research data, which is, as you all know, quite a complex beast in the sense we have different levels which interact with each other, which is first of all, of course, the European level, where you have players like the European Commission, European Research Council, and other players. And you have regional levels. Sometimes it's organized also through projects or alliances, like university alliances, also associations of universities. Then you have the national level, institutional levels, of course, and all these come with their own needs and all funding streams, which are to some degree coordinated, but there's still, of course, a need to align these strategies, and policies have differences, of course, and on all these levels, they look to what the Commission is pushing for, but different paces, different priorities, and you're likely familiar with the ways on how this landscape moves forward, which is often through top-down approaches in terms of there's a policy, there's some funding on the table, and then you have some matching perhaps on the national levels or institutional levels, and you have disciplines, of course, which have their own agendas, own infrastructures, and then you have challenges like maintaining infrastructures, but also bringing people up to speed in the sense you have different backgrounds from different disciplines, and you need support staff, which is actually helping researchers to make this happen. If it's not just depositing your data at a certain place, but also making data interoperable, findable, and reusable. So when it comes to the policies, we have moved from in FP7. It actually started a bit earlier. I mean, this drive towards supporting open science with the open access policies of the Commission, and then gradually adding requirements and recommendations. And we're now at a state where we have quite strong requirements in the research data management area, with a data management plan is an obligatory element of projects funded by the Commission. And also FAIR is mentioned there in a strong sense that data management is supposed to be following the principles of the findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So I will not dive into the details of this, but I hope that Eva perhaps will later on in her presentation tell us a little more about the nitty-gritty of implementing this and in the more practical sense. So when it comes to data, of course, this is a core asset for research, but also for other areas of the European research area. So industry is, of course, also building on data which is shared from publicly funded research. And data is not only meant for humans, but also for machines. So this technical element is an important aspect. And the data out there, I mean, there's plenty of still in the wild, in the sense it's not managed, it's neither open nor fair. But the impetus of these whole developments in terms of policies and support measures is to make data fair, and also to make data as open as possible, while as closed as necessary. So nowadays, when it comes to the policies of the Commission, you have to come up with a reason if you don't want to share. So I will not explain every detail here. And in addition, to make research transparent, reproducible, there's also some requirement now in these policies to explain what tools have been used, what instruments to actually enable people who would like to reproduce and fully understand the research findings based on, first of all, the publications, but the research data as well. And to come to a firm understanding and to be able to apply these findings. And we have still a mix, of course, where lots of other practices are recommended, but not in the sense of these are requirements which you have to follow. There's a lot of room for individual choices in these policies.
Birgit, excuse me, you are not
sorry,
sharing you are now sharing the full screen. Probably you can, I think that you are putting the slides, but not more than the first one. Sorry.
So you're not seeing my slides.
Mm.
So let me try this.
We're seeing
No,
the
we
PowerPoint.
are seeing your slides. It's just not the full screen. We see
Yeah.
the series of slides on the left and then the main one.
You see the presenter mode, is this correct?
It's not the present mode, let's say. It's we can see them, but it's not in the presentation mode.
So I have them in presentation mode.
Okay.
Do you have two screens?
Yes, I have two screens.
Maybe that's the key. Yeah.
So remember, I just plug out my other screen, but this is my hub to the internet, so this will not work. This is weird. I have another alternative. I have the slides also in the cloud, so let me stop sharing. I can share the other through other means. Let me see where they are. So this is too many things open, of course. Let's see. I thought we had it while we tested.
Especially because it worked during the test session. Of
Yeah,
course.
during the test session, it seemed to work fine. And now we have a strange phenomenon here.
Yeah, but otherwise, because we could still see them. I mean,
Yeah, so let me, but I have them here. We share screen. So this is the web version, and then so where's the presenter mode? It's down there. So now you should be able to see the slides, right?
Great.
So now you can see them briefly. So this was the landscape thing, the move through the policies, fair data, fair and open data. So we are here. So, and I wanted to briefly mention the policy agenda in the context of the European research area, where you have lots of points. Our main points are, of course, the open sharing of knowledge, and also the link to the European Open Science Cloud. We will not dive deep into the European Open Science Cloud today, but I have a few slides borrowed from Sarah Jones. And then also some reform still ongoing in sense of European copyright, because this is also very relevant in terms of data. And also the ongoing reform of research assessment, where you we'll still have a discussion on what research outputs count. So also a discussion for a different day, not for today. So, and I digged into some data. So this is from the a regular survey, which is done by I think it's by Nature and Figshare. So they collect data for this State of Open Data report. And there's one question asking how familiar are researchers with FAIR. So in the subset, the European-based researchers, you can see here, so number is declining, just the orange bars for never heard of FAIR, and the green ones. So we are on a good trajectory in terms of familiarity. And then, of course, there's this in the middle, have heard but don't know. So this is certainly also a target group in terms of support in explaining what's really expected. So, and when it comes to how do they share the data, on top you find the external repositories, Figshare, Zenodo, and so on. Then comes the cloud sharing, about a third. So the first bar is about half of all who responded to this little survey. So not many responses, but about 850, 60, and institutional repositories are also were mentioned. So there were multiple mentions possible by about a third of these respondents, and then a few other things. So when it comes to the European Open Science Cloud, it has, of course, a broad vision in the sense of bringing data together in a connected environment where you can move from different services, repositories, and discover data. So the vision here is to make this all happen under the umbrella of the FAIR principles, and really bring it about, of course, through projects which are funded. So many elements will be brought together here. This is a mixed, as you might have come across a couple of them. So it's disciplines, clusters, it's regional clusters, and also very specific project which address partly questions like persistent identifiers, training, and so on. So, and for the researcher, the goal is to come up with, of course, tangible value. For example, make it easy to single sign on into the services, to use them. Sometimes you will likely still have to contact your local service provider to make this real, in the sense everyone stumbles across these little barriers, but then of course it will, after a while, will be feel something environment which you can work with. And making all these services accessible in a broad fashion, so things which come from different disciplines, make them available also to other disciplines, provide compute environments, and make data discoverable across different disciplines and sectors, and overall leading to a greater ability to collaborate and jointly address research questions in such an environment. So, and I finally wanted to briefly touch on the alliances which have been formed over the last few years. So there are currently about 40 alliances, which is based on the Erasmus Plus funding program, but there's satellite projects which address to create joint research and innovation agendas, and they could pick and choose from different transformative modules. So the idea, of course, here is to trigger some test beds for these making open science mainstream or sharing infrastructures across these alliances. And often, of course, it's, okay, you start with the teaching and learning. Yeah, this is an example Göttingen is involved in, the Enlight Alliance. They, of course, first of all create their joint campus things. And then in the satellite project, we plugged in things like, yeah, get an overview what's there in terms of open science, think about sharing infrastructures. And we did a scoping exercise in terms of different open science activity areas. So this is the visualization on the right. At the bottom is open access, so quite a good level of activity there. ADIAM is the next one from the bottom, also looks quite good. And then high up, it's a bit more heterogeneous in the sense some feel that they have quite a substantial level of activity, and others say, oh, well, maybe was not the first thing. So open education, for example, although they started out with teaching and learning, is not necessarily one of the high priorities in these alliances, but might come in the next phase. So it's and there's a report out there you might like to have a look after this event. And in our survey, we also asked the question in terms of, have the policies in place across these alliance of 9 universities? And this again was heterogeneous. There were some policies, and some already had an element of fair embedded, sometimes literally, but also sometimes in the sense of not explicitly covered, but in the sense of some elements of fair are covered, or it's at least in the plan for the next revision of the policy, which of course with policies, you don't do this every few years, but maybe every 5 to 10 years to revise your policy. So, and to wrap up, it's open science in a way has arrived on all these levels, but there's still a need to ensure and sustain the commitment, both in terms of the people who are involved, but also in terms of the resources, and also to identify solutions to address the gaps and be aware that there's still barriers and there's inequalities in the sense of who has access to what support and what works for which discipline. So there will be differences which have to be approached both in the sense of top-down support, encouragement, but also in the sense of bottom-up approaches. And we will hear certainly more about this in the following presentations. So with this, I close, and so questions might come later.
Thank you very much, Birgit, for your rich views on the European perspective, not only the political normal European Commission and the traditional scope of the European institutions, but also of the European alliances. I think that's very good, as you mentioned, a test bed for future developments. I think we can come back to that during the Q&A session. So thank you. And now we move to Susanne Blumesberger. Susanne is the head of the Department of the Repository Management of FIDA Services at the University of Vienna. She has been working at the University Library of Vienna since 2007. She has been working as a librarian, and she has a rich background in German studies and also communication studies. So Susanne, thank you very much for hosting the webinar, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. And can you see the presentation?
Yes, yes, Susanne.
Perfect, thank you. Yes, I'm very happy that our Vice Rector, Ronald Meyer, just gave us a very good overview about our activities. And actually, we have been doing research data management since at least 2007, when we started building our repository. It's called FEDRA. FEDRA was designed as an institutional repository for all types of data, for example, data from administration, from research, and also from teaching. From the beginning, it was important to us to keep the system open to everyone, including students. FEDRA is based on the open source software Fedora and was gradually adapted to the needs of a very large and heterogeneous university in cooperation between the university library and the central IT service. The requirements for long-term archiving of data changed and specialized. As a result, we currently have not only one system called FEDRA, but several, including one for testing purposes, and also an internal system whose contents can only be accessed within the University of Vienna, and in which data may also be deleted. Over the years, there have been several extensions. Part of FEDRA became uScholar, the repository for open access publications. Researchers and teachers at the University of Vienna can upload their publications via uScholar and link the underlying research data and both in the system via FEDRA. Of course, each object in FEDRA receives a permanent link. A digital object identifier can be requested before uploading or afterwards. A supplement to the long-term archive FEDRA is the so-called UNIDAM, which on the one hand is used very successfully as an image database, and on the other hand can also be used to manage the data before long-term archiving. A major step towards comprehensive data management was taken with AUSTA. AUSTA is a data infrastructure for the social science community in Austria and offers research supporting services, in particular data archiving and help with data reuse. Social science data is made accessible and reusable for science and society. Together, we run a website that summarizes all key data management issues and link to other pages, such as the FEDRA's detailed service page. Since data management plans are mandatory for external funded projects in 2019, we also jointly offer support in this area. In addition to advice, training, and special websites, researchers also have access to a ticket system. The close cooperation of the various departments together with the central IT service makes comprehensive research support possible. In 2021, a research data policy was adopted, Ronald Meyer just told it, which gives researchers advice on how to publish their data most profitably and at the same time makes the service of the library and the central IT service more visible. A few weeks ago, a pilot project started with 3 data stewards at different faculties We also heard it from Ronald Meyer, and also a coordinating position at the Vienna University Library. And with these people who are very close to research and are supposed to form a bridge between researchers and people from data management, it is possible to adapt the advice even better to the respective needs from research. A certification course, Data Steward, taught by international experts from different fields, starts on next Monday. The course was immediately fully booked. People from 10 nations will participate. At the University Library, research data management is embedded in the research support service. In addition, we not only work closely with other service units at the University of Vienna, including the research service, but are also represented in numerous international committees. We exchange information nationally with projects such as Fair Data Austria, and also in networks such as the Network for Repository Managers, shortly named WebManNet. And also internationally with various European projects such as OpenAIR and also the European Open Science Cloud. We try to promote our services as well as possible and offer numerous training courses all the time. That was a very compact overview of our services at the University of Vienna, and I'm very much looking forward to your questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Susanne, for your presentation. Thank you very much for providing us this outline of the services provided by your university. So now we have this vision on the European landscape, the institutional, the alliances. Then we have this view on how one institution can put into practice a research data management policy, how the infrastructures can be aligned to the objectives of the institution. And now we go further. Now we try to have the opinion of experts who are working with the data in a daily basis. We are now moving to research. So let me first of all introduce you Dimitrios Kousapas. He is going to talk about data management for high-profile research and innovation projects. Dimitrios is a chair of the Data Management Committee of the Kiosk Center of Excellence at the University of Cyprus. He is a research associate at this center, and his background comes from computer science at the University of Cyprus, and also a Master of Science degree in Advanced Computing for the Department of Computing at the Imperial College London in 2009. So his personal background, his actual research work, and this role as chair of the Data Management Committee of the Kiosk Center of Excellence provides him with a very good view on the topic. So please, Dimitrios, you can start now.
So thank you, Raul, for the introduction. Thank you also for the invitation, for inviting the University of Cyprus participating in this event. Can you see my full screen?
Yeah.
Yes, it works.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go. So the University of Cyprus here has chosen Kiosk Center of Excellence to present here today. Kiosk is a Center of Excellence for Research and Innovation. It was established as a small research unit in 2008, and it was upgraded as a Center of Excellence in 2017 through the Horizon 2020 teaming project, if you're aware of it. And part of the teaming project was to perform efficient data management. Now, Kiosk operates within the University of Cyprus at the level of faculty. It is the biggest research center in Cyprus with over 180 people. And part of the teaming requirements was a strategic collaboration with the an international partner, and that partner is Imperial College London. Now, very briefly, these are the areas of expertise for Kiosk. There are several activities that derive from critical infrastructure systems, such as energy and power systems, intelligent transportation systems, water systems and environmental monitoring, telecommunication, emergency management, and healthcare. Now, Kiosk has a lot of activity in competitive research and innovation projects. We have over 40 active multidisciplinary research and innovation projects that are funded by the EU and national funding agencies. We have several synergies, national, international, and with industrial and government partners. And we address global and regional challenges. Also, part of the teaming project was to establish an innovation hub that has over 20 active projects. So with all of these projects and all of these personnel, there is a need for data management, for a complete policy on data management. And data management is not alone, is part of a bigger network of support, to a network that supports the center's research and innovation activities. You can see here with a blue color, sorry, let me just get my laser pointer. With blue color, the data management committee, but it's in a very close collaboration with other committees and other units like security, innovation management, risk management, open access, the IT department, and training activities, and the entire network here. So data management, each Kiosk project needs to compile its own data management plan. Then this comes from the teaming deliverable requirements. And for that reason, a data management committee was established that is responsible to keep and maintain a standard operating procedure for data management, to provide, to constantly update and review a data management plan for the researchers here to take as a template to develop their own management plans, to monitor, review, and consult the different research and innovation teams, and to constantly review and update the procedures. For example, recently we have done the review in order to update our data management plan following the Horizon Europe guidelines. So this is a diagram roughly presenting the standard operating procedures that are followed through a research and innovation project. Once a new research and innovation project gets accepted, or even before it gets accepted, sometimes the group that is responsible for it, the principal investigator, will decide on the storages and services that are needed, and also the backup policy, and it will request these resources from the data management committee. The data management committee, in collaboration with the IT department, will allocate the project space as it was requested, and at the same time, it will put a registry entry for the new project in the data management registry. During the implementation of the project now, a data management plan will be prepared that is constantly reviewed and updated. This data management plan will be registered at the data management registry, so the data management committee can monitor that the data management plan is being applied as planned, and at the same time, data are being produced or processed by the project, and then the research and innovation group is responsible to characterize this data according to the data management plan. It has in its disposal the network of support from the data management committee and other committees and units within the center to help with the characterization of data. For example, sensitive data need to go through the ethics and security advisory board for further consulting, or open access data gives the policies and the tools to make data open access and available. So all this experience here it's crucial for the center and data management of the center. And of course, this data are stored in the project space as it was allocated within Kiosk. Now, one important note here is that the different committees, they only have access to data only if it's needed. So you don't, the data management committee here does not have to have access directly to the data, depending on the nature of the data and the nature of the project. Of course, open access data are being open for everyone. Now, second thing I want to present today is the data management plan template. Now, data management plan, according to our procedure here, has the project description. It also defines the project members, which is important to have to define their roles and their data usage groups. And it defines the data summary of the different data collections that are expected to be generated, or even if unexpected data sets are generated, then also these are characterized within the data management plan as part of the update and the review of the data management plan. Now, this data summary includes the purpose of data, the relation to the project objectives, categories of data origins, like observational, experimental, simulation, or even the derived and compiled, how the data are used by different usage groups, and other metadata that describe the data, name, type, format, sensitivity, data that were collected or generated, etc. Now, also the data management plan has an explicit section on fair data, and it gives guidelines for each project to decide how it will make data findable, the policy to make data accessible, like storage, sensitivity levels, has the access control policy, and it defines open data procedure and tools. How these data are made interoperable, this interoperability is made aware to each project. So and each project needs to decide on data formats and data processing tools. And reusing has to do with intellectual property, licenses, etc. It also defines roles and responsibilities within the data management of the project. For the principal investigator, the data protection officer, which is one data protection officer for the entire university, and also roles and responsibilities for the different units and committees within the Kiosk Center of Excellence. Finally, the data management plan has a dedicated section on data security. And this has to do mostly with technologies and mechanisms that describe how to store, how to back up and recover, mechanisms for mostly technologies for access control, and also it describes the specific policy for GDPR compliance, and this includes consent forms, explicit statement of the GDPR rights, when we can anonymize data, etc. And finally, there is a section where each project declares any ethical issues that arises from data collection and processing, and it also completes already made ethics self-assessments. Now, just to summarize, like the Kiosk Center of Excellence has over 60 active, and most of them are high-profile research and innovation projects. It has more than 800 personnel, and there is a need for data management. Now, data management, each project is required to compile a data management plan, and it's also required to follow standard procedures and policy for data management, as these standards, procedures, and policies are defined by the Kiosk support structure, and this support structure constantly consults and reviews high-profile standards that exist today in the national and European practices. So thank you very much, and I welcome your questions, I guess, after the presentations.
Thank you very much, Dimitrios, for this overview on how you are working with the researchers in providing them with clear guidelines on how to develop the data management plans. That's really essential in the institutions. So next move to the following speaker. He is Wolfgang Krauss, professor of the Department of Social and Cultural Anthropology at the University of Vienna. Wolfgang Krauss is an associate professor at this department. As a study program director, he is responsible for organizing teaching and studies in social and cultural anthropology. He has done extensive field research, and as we all know, this type of research needs the gathering and the processing of a lot of data. So I guess his contribution to this webinar today will be really valuable for all of us. So Wolfgang, the floor is yours.
So many thanks. I hope you can hear me. All right, can you hear me?
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, many thanks for the invitation. I feel honored by being able to participate in this meeting. I must confess, since what I'm going to present is to be really in contrast with what you've heard before. And this was also what I expected when I was first asked if I wanted to participate. So I asked myself whether my specific focus and the focus of our institution is not a bit too specific and too narrow for the purposes of this meeting. But Susanne convinced me that this is not the case, and I hope after my presentation, you will agree that she was right in that. So what I'm going to discuss is the ethnographic data archive that exists largely because of my own initiative, and that we set up with a couple of colleagues over the last 5 years, the ethnographic data archive at the Vienna University Library. And okay, so how can I go forward? As I already mentioned, my approach is in a way in opposition to what you've heard before, insofar that it is very much researcher-centered. And the whole ethnographic data archive is has not come about in the typical way as a top-down institution or institutional activity, but as a grassroots initiative starting from the point of view of researchers. And it has evident disciplinary and methodological focus. So it starts from the perspective of social and cultural anthropology and qualitative and ethnographic research. We do think that what we are doing has a relevance for much of qualitative research beyond our narrow discipline, but still within the realm of the social sciences and to some extent cultural sciences, where data are gathered in encounters with real living people. We are a small initiative, but we try not to be an island. And an important point in that is that our archival infrastructure is provided by the Federal Repository that you have already heard about in Susanne's presentation. And the whole thing is a cooperation between my department, the Department of Social and Cultural Anthropology, with the Vienna University Library. As you already understood, FEDA is part of the activities of the Vienna University Library. And from our point of view, this is a very fruitful cooperation that is working very well. Let me start by a few necessary superficial remarks about open science and open data. Much of what we are discussing and what we hear and read about these fields comes along with promises of better science, a science that is more transparent, more reliable, more reproducible, more replicable, more efficient, more accountable, and simply more relevant. In contrast to that, there is a lot of skepticism about these things and about the demands that come along with the open data discourse in anthropology, but also in related other disciplines. And much of that has to do with the fact that we feel that much of what, for lack of time, let me call the open data discourse, relies on the positivist model of research that we feel is not appropriate for qualitative and ethnographic research. Nevertheless, we think that there are very good reasons for archiving and sharing ethnographic data, and the existence of the Ethnographic Data Archive is a testimony to that. Let me also mention another point. I'm going to mostly talk about archiving, but we also feel that data of ongoing something closely related to what we think about archiving and when we practice the archiving of ethnographic data. So what I would claim here is that it's very interesting to take a look at the topic of data management from the point of view of an archival perspective. Of course, this is not the complete picture, but I think it's an important complement. Let me just briefly quote some definitions. We can read that research data is refined as recorded factual material commonly retained by and accepted in the scientific community as necessary to validate research findings. Or another formulation, research data are defined as data that are descriptive of the research object or are the object itself. Why am I quoting this? Because in a way it contrasts very clearly with our perspective. I would, again, in a kind of superficial argument that would take a lot of time to be deepened, claim that we find two sets of assumptions here, one more related to epistemology and the second one more related to economy. The first set contains the assumptions that data, and let me again say this is a superficial argument which is to some extent exaggerated in order to make the point more clearly that I wish to make. Data document the real world independently of their specific research context. This is one assumption. Therefore, they are largely unproblematic to reuse in different contexts. And finally, data may and should serve to reproduce and verify the results of research. This is a quote taken from the webpage of the FWF, the Austrian Science Fund, as it is also called in English, so the main Austrian institution for research funding for many disciplines at least. The second set of assumptions, which, as I said, are related to economy, claims that once public money is invested in order to fund research, the data collected by necessity become assets that cannot be owned by the researcher, and that the public, and this includes other researchers, of course, has a right to access and reuse this data. Taken together, these sets of assumptions imply ideals of objectivity, reproducibility or replicability, related but different terms, cost efficiency, and finally, the efficiency of knowledge generation. Now, in contrast to that, let me also briefly outline some of the basic assumptions of ethnographic research. First, we assume in our practice of producing data that these data are not found out there, but they are co-constructed in a process of dialogue between the researcher and the research subject. A consequence of that is that they also belong to the research subjects and their communities, which have an interest and a legitimate interest in the data. There are no raw, uninterpreted data in ethnography. So all data already include some element of processing and interpreting. As ethnographic data are products of relation and dialogue, they are neither objective nor subjective. Why do I state this? Because I think that this distinction builds on a clear distinction between the subject in the research process and the object of research. And this is something that doesn't hold in ethnographic research, where there is always a process and a relation between the several sides involved, at least two sides involved, and that makes it impossible to clearly distinguish between subject and object. This is also the obvious reason why we are talking about research subjects at all. Then there is a gradual difference, but no discontinuity between ethnographic knowledge and everyday knowledge and experience. And finally, ethical considerations must take precedence before considerations of efficiency. If we do not archive, manage and archive data for the according to the assumptions that I presented before, what is the rationale of our archival activities? We have three main arguments. Ethnographic data have an intrinsic interest beyond the primary research context. First, because they are rich in a way that is generally not fully exploited in the original analysis. Second, because as they are being situated in time and space, ethnographic are historical by nature. So at a different point in time, they have the potential to serve as historic material. And third, because the research subjects who participate in the research process have their own legitimate interest in the data and should be given access to them. So let me briefly say a few words about the Ethnographic Data Archive. We are a very small organization initiative consisting only of a few people. I am the scientific leader. We have the leader of our social and cultural anthropology library within the university library as our coordinator. Igor Eberhard is the archive manager, and we have as archive assistants MA student Jasmin Hilbert. The permanent storage takes place in Fedra, as I already mentioned. We started as a pilot project in 2017, and now since 2019 are part of the normal operations of the Vienna University Library. I will put the contact details in the chat when I have finished. The starting point for our initiative was the awareness that a generational change was taking place at our department, and that people would be gone in a couple of years who had collected interesting material, and that these materials should be processed and archived as long as they are still available for the process. So the cooperation with researchers rather than the administration of legacies. Our main activities are to define archival and metadata strategies and standards, which are adapted to the specificities of ethnographic and qualitative research. Then testing and defining best practice digitization workflows. to network and exchange with other data management and archival initiatives, something we do very closely, also in order not to end up as an island. And in the medium to long term, the development of a comprehensive research data management strategy for our discipline and for related fields. We find several challenges that have been extensively debated in the literature in doing so. And one could say that we are facing contradictory demands. One is meaningful for reuse, the other, which often contradicts the first one, is to protect subjects, their privacy, their interests. Some questions are arising from these activities where I'm trying, which I used to, in trying to sum up the challenges that we deal with are how can we adequately represent the wider research context of data objects, their interlinked nature in relation to that context, and the researcher's positionality. All of these are highly important topics if we try to abstain from a positivist model of research. How can we protect the research subjects' privacy, their interests, and their security? How can we pseudonymize without loss of context, which would make the data next to useless? How can we make data accessible and meaningful for their source communities, that is, the communities of the research subjects? And in the case of critical data, how can we identify who exactly, who precisely is entitled to represent these communities? We have some partial solutions. We developed some partial solutions for some of these challenges, and also very quickly summing up the most important ones among them. That is, first, sustainability through optimized workflows, file formats through standardized procedures and metadata and through quality control. Then secondly, the comprehensive contextualization in research settings and the interlinking of data objects from the same research context. The conceptualization of the notion of container object, which consists of several data files that represent the same analog object. This is also something that helps us to retain the context of specific objects and not to decontextualize the information that they might contain. Then the development of a category that we call context data. This is something which is too extensive for metadata, but is relevant information about data objects. And context data have two important characteristics. One is that they can have an authorship, which metadata in most understandings by definition do not have, and that there is the possibility to restrict access to them in the case of sensitive data. So this can be extended information on specific objects, there can be information on the research context, and finally informations on researchers, on the circumstances of their research, on their biographies, and so on. And then an important and central point in our understanding for the future that we have not yet been able to implement is the collaborative contextualization in dialogue with research subjects. So in order to sum up our perspective, our take on archiving and sharing ethnographic data, we assume that as historically situated representations of a world in flux, ethnographic data do have a value beyond the primary research context. But we feel that the dialogic character of ethnography and the access that ethnographers gain to personal life worlds raise important issues of confidentiality, privacy, and reciprocity. Therefore, we think that the categories of ownership of data, control, access to, and license to use data must be carefully distinguished and clarified, again in dialogue with research subjects. For ethical and legal reasons, in many cases, fully open data is not an option, and this makes access management for data objects highly complex. And this necessitates also some further development of the repository. So in the future development of FEDRA, we feel that several graded levels of access to data must be defined and implemented. And with this, I'm afraid I have already taken a bit more than my allocated time. Many thanks for your attention. And once again, I'm looking forward to your questions in the final question session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang. Yes, you have been speaking for a little bit more time, but no problem at all, because I think your perspective was totally different. You started by some kind of skepticism in some fields, in research fields, and how can you lead to make the most of the open data by providing more context and supporting future developments of the infrastructures. Okay, so last speaker, Eva Mendez. Eva Mendez is Deputy Vice President for Scientific Policy at the Universidad Carlos III de Madrid. Her background is library science, and she has been really active in open science since a long time. It would be useful if I try to remember all her initiatives. So she's here to talk about FAIR principles, and several times mentioned this afternoon. So Eva, you can start.
Thank you very much, Raul. Well, my role here, well, first of all, I want to thank UNICA. I'm a member of UNICA because my university has the fortune to be in one of the capitals of Europe. I'm working in the University Carlos III of Madrid. Thank you, Raul. I think it's always very challenging to introduce a colleague. I work with Raul many projects very closely. And what I have to tell you today is just the perspective of the technical issues. I think is the worst part after knowing the policies, the use cases at the institutional level, and a very amazing center of excellence, and also the perspective of the real research on the data curation and data management. But I think it's important when we talk about data management and FAIR principles to have a look what it means, because it's very, I always say that FAIR is the perfect acronym after LASER. If I ask you how many of you remember what LASER stands for, probably nobody will remember that is the light amplification by a stimulated emission of radiation. Probably in 10 years' time, nobody will know what it first stands for, but everybody probably will practice FAIR data or will do the practical implementation of FAIR data. Probably you have seen 1 million times what findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable means in terms of principles. One thing that I would like to underline first of talking about what does it mean the findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability is to clarify that FAIR are principles, not standards. Why I like to underline this? Because I'm just fed up of seeing in many projects, in many initiatives, that this is FAIR compliant. You can't be compliant with a standard, nor with principles. You can address the principles, but it's not a standard as such. So it is just in the time that is not a standard, it's just a background of recommendations to make the data more findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. But also, I'm always, when I'm talking about FAIR data, I say I need more R's. because it's not only about reusability, it's also about reproducibility and reliability of data, which is something that we as information professionals, as managers of data, we have to be committed with this reliability and reproducibility. For example, in REA, there is a working group, one of the million of interest and working groups about data management is about core and fair data. That means how to make the data part of the reproducibility process. And also, when we talk about the reliability, it's also another principle that should be included. But it's more difficult to identify the reliability of the data if we don't use correctly the standards that will legitimize the authorship, the currency, and many other important issues that surrounds the data that we are managing in research. In general terms, we talk about metadata in every single part of the principles, in every single principle. It's supposed that in generally we have in the research, in the metadata research, we think that the metadata are in the core of the findability, as the metadata are in the core of the findability of the digital libraries, as the metadata in the core of the findability of the search in general terms in the web, etc. But also the metadata have a role very important in the accessibility and in the interoperability. And also we think about the licensing metadata and the way we describe the reusability issues. There is also a role for the metadata in the reusability principle. And of course, when we talk about interoperable data, we have to extend our notion of metadata to vocabularies and interoperable metadata for the open science. This is the core business. And also, if we think about what does it mean to be fair, or how fair are your data, it is exactly to think about metadata standards that you are going to address for your principles. What are the associated metadata that you have in the deposit or in the permanent storage of the data? How interoperable are your data within your domain and also with other domains, which is another issue that I will also underline later on in my presentation. And also when we think about metadata standards, I always say that there is as many metadata standards as disciplines and initiatives and all these kind of approaches in different fields. When it comes to the research data, it is slightly different than what we are addressing open science, addressed in the publications, because every single publication has at least common metadata to define a publication in chemist or a publication in anthropology. But when it comes to research data, it's not the same case, the data or the metadata that an ethnographer needs for his research, that the metadata that an astrophysics researcher needs for make his or her data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So the issue here to make fair data that is simple acronym is a very technical approach. So for me, to make fair data is to make cool metadata. And also when we working on Fair is Fair, one of the projects that Birgit was mentioning before in the Kiosk landscape, in the Kiosk ecosystem of projects, Fair is Fair, I was all the time just joking with this. We need cool metadata in the same sense that Tim Berners-Lee talked in the late 90s about cool URLs to make the web happen. If we want to make the web of data, the research data management globally in the Kiosk landscape, we need cool metadata. And those cool metadata are those that they are machine understandable as well as human understandables. Those metadata that they are not just for description and discoverability, I mean the findability, but also for preservation, for restrictions, and also to align the provenance in that way that we are capable to address not only the reusability, but also the reliability and the reproducibility of the research as such. In general terms, I'm always saying that when we talk about fair giving principles, when we talk about the FAIR principles, we talk about an 80% of metadata and 20% of PIDs. Actually, this is one of the slides from Barry Mons when we were discussing this by Twitter. That's why he was citing me about what is the content of a digital object or a digital data object, and what is the percentage of the weight that the metadata has of doing this data findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. And I'm reducing the 20% to the persistent identifiers, but it always says that we can negotiate the percentage, because it could be some disciplines that in terms of provenance, they need to be more persistent on the identification. And there are some of the disciplines that they don't need such a persistency or such a differences in the identification of the research cycle as such. If we think about a communication of data that is fair, we will think that when we provide data to someone else, all the types of information that you want to include in those data that make those data useful. Those are the way that you can provide information about making the data useful. Always metadata is a way of making data useful. And that's why in the FAIR data is so important. And all the way around, when we receive a data set, we want to know what is the project, what is the person who produced this data, what are the restrictions of those data, what are the types of details that you want to know about all those data that make them useful for your next research or useful for reproduce the existing research where the data came from. So the value of metadata is clear in all the steps of the data cycle. If we think about the typical data one definition of the data life cycle, we can also push the value of the fairness of the metadata description when we think about description, but also I will say that in all the steps of the data cycle, you need to think over the metadata that they will make richer the process of data reporting. So if we think about another key issue on the fairness, it is also rich metadata. When the principle F2 says you have to provide your data with rich metadata. What is rich metadata? Rich metadata are cool metadata. So this is why the bad description of your data will come up with an empty bucket of whatever it is in your data set. If you come with the minimum viable description, you will end up knowing what are those data about. But if you have rich metadata, it means that you have not only the description, but the values of the attributes that they can make your data reusable, or they can make your data the key of the reproducibility. So this is what rich data means, having structural metadata. And if we think about again on the Kiosk kingdom, on the Kiosk landscape or Kiosk ecosystem, as we have to tell about now, we have to think about different users of data in the whole data cycle. And of course, in these different uses of data, we have the extensive data disciplines that they are very much based on big data. I'm thinking on life sciences or physics or these kind of earth sciences data. But also we have to think about all these long tail of science disciplines that they are not intensive data disciplines, but they have a lot of data that they have also to become part of the research data. And this is here when the fairness is a challenge, because being fair within your domain is pretty easy. I mean, it's not easy. Whatever of you that you can try to make data fair is not easy, but I mean, it's not as much difficult as makes the metadata and the vocabularies valid for the interdisciplinary research, which is what we are trying to come up in the Kiosk, having a landscape for research where we can not only find data, but discover data. Which is when they have the discoverability issue, is when the eureka happens in the research data management and in the research data searching. But also in this interdisciplinary research is what the data and the metadata and the fairness comes with a very, very clear challenge. Because if we think about the Kiosk landscape, which is our main frame for all what we are doing in the open science orientation to data nowadays, we go back to the problem. If we think about metadata in the Kiosk landscape, again, we are back to the problem, what I call my toothbrush metaphor, that probably some of you that you heard me before talking about metadata, I'm always says this, that metadata are like the toothbrush. Everybody thinks that it's a very good idea, but everybody wants to use their own. So this is the problem when we come up in a landscape of research data that is out of your discipline, that you have to agree upon standards, you have to agree upon vocabularies, and you have to agree upon the level of richness, the level of provenance, and the level of fairness that you want to reach. This is what I describe in the Fair is Fair project on the what I call the metadata layer, which is something that has to be cross to the whole domains and really help to the data layer of the Kiosk. That means that it has to help the data storage, the data accessibility, the data manipulation and exportation, the data discoverability, which is where we come up with the metadata catalogs, that they have to be the main catalogs where the disciplines are all equal, independently if the data come from citizen science practices or the data come from sensors in astrophysics. So this is the real challenge that I want to put on the table today. And let me just finish with a very brief reflection about what is the challenge of being an open scientist when we think about fair data. Of course, about the technical complexity, but also the challenge is in the inter or cross-disciplinary research. We have to avoid the toothbrush effect of the metadata and the standards that they will let us follow the FAIR principles. We need to think about more than yet another metadata standard, about a catalog of integration of different standards to make the data fair, and also think about the metadata quality, that if we can think about quality on the richness of your data and your metadata, that means not only addressing schemas of properties, but also approaches in what we call in the new trends of the research data management, semantic artifacts, all those vocabularies that they will reach the interoperability in terms of different domains. And also we have to think about that good research outcomes, it doesn't matter if we talk about publications or research data, means that we will have good metadata. The problem is how to make this difficult balance between the rich, the cool, the good metadata that will make our data fair. And that's it, and I'm very happy for the discussion with the rest of the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eva. We almost run out of time. The point is that it was great to listen to the speakers, and there are no questions. Apparently, nobody has no questions, no doubts on what we've been discussing today. We have not a lot of time, but I would like to mention something that comes up from everything we have heard today, is that We need to have clear criteria for processing the data. We need to have infrastructures. We need to provide the context to the research. There are many initiatives in our countries, in our institutions, in the European Union. But what's up with the people, with the professionals supporting the data and the libraries? So at least one headline from any of you. What would you ask to data specialists in your institutions? What do you think they must provide you if you are working as researchers, or you are working as decision makers, or you are working as, sorry Birgit for putting you in this position, as you are policy makers in the European Union?
So what was the...
What would you ask?
Your last half sentence was kind of unclear to me.
Sorry. What would you ask for people trying to support researchers with data management, data curation?
So asking what the policymakers should do, or
yeah,
this is your question, right?
Yeah, from that's right. From the point of view of the policymakers,
yeah.
What can we do to have good data specialists at our institutions?
Well, I mean, I have the feeling that the investment is shifting into infrastructures in the technical sense, which is not good, because it's drying out the human element and all the calls of the Commission. I mean, Kiosk is kind of present there, but some funding programs are really drying out the activity types as we had in Fairs Fair, where we had training, we have education, but the implementation part is always then left to the institutional level, and there it's very difficult to find the funds, because it's piecemeal only, which is, you can embed perhaps a little bit into projects, but the coordination element is essential. And I hope this will come back. I mean, because otherwise we will lose a lot of value, which has been built up over the last years with networks, including Open Air, but also the University Alliance is now forming. We need coordination across these alliances to work together to move it into reality. I mean, otherwise it will simply not happen, but yeah, drift in all directions again. And then the ones who have a lot of resources will do certain things, and the others will not be able to join up, and this is would be a pity, I would say. So,
thank you for pointing this out.
So I trust on associations like UNICA and other university associations to promote this to the Commission. And when you have these conversations, which I know are happening from time to time, we need these programs. It's the human element, the coordination of the researchers, of course, but also the support element.
Thank you. And Susanne and Dimitrios, from your perspective, from the institution and from an excellent center at Cyprus, how do you tackle this problem regarding data specialists?
So yes, okay, sometimes we see some resistance from researchers to actually apply exactly the policy that is proposed. So what we're trying to do here is to raise awareness first, and secondly to have, let's say, easy to use or maybe easy to understand templates and procedures so that everybody can follow. But still, we're in a constant process to convince people that this effort is worth being done. And I think that what I would say to policymakers is to, I don't know, maybe make the process easy to understand, raise awareness, and make the process easier, make the policy easier.
Susanne?
Yes, I agree with Dimitrios. Make it easier and make it a little bit different for different types of research and for different fields. I think there are many researchers who are very good in data management and other are not so good in data management. And let's learn from each other and establish a network so that they can learn from each other. I think that would be fine.
Okay, thank you. Wolfgang, you are a researcher. When you need to deal with the data, what help do you actually get? What help do you actually need and cannot get because this is out of your reach or out of the reach of any institution right now?
Yeah, I would actually prefer to answer this from the point of view of a data specialist, which is what we are in the Ethnographic Data Archive in a sense. And one observation that I make, and this is a major challenge for our activities, is that researchers begin to understand the importance of data management and data archiving slowly, but they do. But the problem is it's always the last priority because other things are so much more important. And so we have a lot of potential that we see, but people do not take advantage of the services that we might provide because of that. And I think part of the reason is that this is not given value on the level of funding, not enough. So what I would say is we need more funding explicitly for data management and data archiving, also after the fact. In a sense, it becomes possible now to integrate this into research projects, but we have many interesting projects that are working or that have been completed not too long ago, where this was not part of the funding, and to have a funding strategy to do these things after the fact would be extremely important in my understanding.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Wolfgang. Eva, I think the question on the chat is to you. I don't know if you have already read it.
Yes, I have read it, but I cannot answer the chat. I can only answer the panelists. So I think it would be great.
No, you can answer on the camera.
Yes.
Sorry, you can actually answer, but I think you can answer in spoken in oral way right now.
Okay, now I can write down to everybody. Okay, thank you very much. But perhaps I can just briefly answer in loud voice. So how can you mix the corpus of data? I mean, not only data, but articles and different kind of data, different supports, different formats, and how to deal with the standards of metadata for every data format. Well, this is one of the challenges that we have to think about when we talk about the landscape like Kiosk, that at the beginning Kiosk was intended to be the European Open Science Cloud. Now we talk about European Open Science Commons, which is a very, very better way to describe it. And every single commons in the research environment will be ideally there. And the point of this is that you have to not mix up in the same structure or infrastructure your metadata for addressing videos and your metadata for addressing audio. You have to be capable to make cross-discipline, cross-domain, cross-material metadata standards that they can describe minimally the research data. For example, we were working, and now we are working in DCAT, which is the standard of the W3C for open data in general, addressing that to research data, and also in a prescription of DDI, which is another standard created originally for social sciences, but also having an alignment to share data catalogs, not data repositories where the data are, but something like a harvesting or a crosswalk of the different deposits, different storage, different repositories, and you come up with a minimum stable metadata that can reach out the key issues of the findability, the reusability of the data, farther than going to the very deep description within the discipline. I think this is the key way to approach, make metadata catalogs instead of data repositories in the whole thing and repeating the whole metadata within the discipline in a very bigger or more broad landscape of interoperability between different formats and disciplines. I don't know if I explain it properly, but I'm happy to elaborate it a bit more if you want me to, or share with you the deliverables that we were working on this initiative, more cross-domain than cross, because your question is more about cross formats or cross data formats or cross kind of materials, but it's also more difficult cross-domain, but that's more or less the perspective.
Okay, thank you, Eva. Dimitrios, did you wanted to say something?
No, sorry, it was my mistake.
No
Yeah,
problem.
sorry.
Okay, thank you all. I think this has been a really exciting and very diverse, a very complex webinar with a lot of food for stuff for continuing discussing in the following events. I think that we can think about the human factor, how to deal with that, because we tend to forget about that. The institutions, the funders tend to